Vita Vea might be Chicago-bound. NFL Network says the Bears already called Tampa about the two-time Pro Bowler. But in a minute, I'm telling you why this could turn into a $50 million mistake. Rookie corner Malik Muhammad just took over the starting slot in the middle of an injury crisis, but his body's hiding a real red flag. And Kieran Amagaji starts today at left tackle, while analysts are already cutting him from the final roster. Bear down. Okay fam, stop everything, because this one is serious. On Friday night, Mike Garafolo of NFL Network dropped the news. The Bears, the Bills, and the Niners called Tampa Bay to ask about Vita Vea's availability. The Buccaneers, according to Garafolo, remain firm that they are not moving him, but they have kept the lines of communication open for a new contract. And you already know how this works in the NFL. Saying we are not trading him is exactly what teams say, right up until the moment they actually trade him. Let's build the full context, because you need to understand how we got here. Vea signed a 4-year, $71 million extension with Tampa back in 2022. At the time, that was a top-of-market contract for a defensive tackle. The problem is, the position exploded over the last 2 years. Several tackles signed new deals north of $30 million a year. And suddenly Vea, who is still one of the best at his position, is not even among the top 10 highest paid players at his own spot anymore. That created real frustration. Extension talks stalled, and Vea, being direct with the organization, asked for the trade. I get why this makes any Bears fans' eyes light up. Look at the 2025 numbers. No interior defensive lineman on the roster outside of Gervon Dexter had more than 1.5 sacks the entire season. The Bears finished tied for 7th fewest sacks in the whole NFL. And it was not just the pass rush that failed. Both Dexter and Grady Jarrett sank in run defense, with Pro Football Focus grades below 50 in that category, and that led Chicago to finish with the 6th worst run defense in the league. That is the hole Vea would come to fill. The guy has recorded 4 sacks or more in each of his last 5 seasons, including a career high of 7 in 2024. And his run defense grades have sat above 60 in almost every one of those years. He is not just a 350-pound space eater. He is a complete player who affects both the run game and the pass rush at the same time. Now, here is where I have to be honest with you, because my job is not just to get you hyped, it is to tell you the truth even when it stings. I read an analysis from Pete Martunick on Chicago Bears on SI this morning, and he raises a tactical point that stopped me cold. Vea is a true nose tackle. He anchors Tampa Bay's 3-man front, a 3-4 scheme where his main job is absorbing double teams to free up the linebackers. Dennis Allen, the Bears' defensive coordinator, runs a 4-3. In that scheme, the tackles need to be faster and attack the quarterback directly instead of simply occupying space. And notice something. The other 2 teams that called about Vea, Buffalo, and San Francisco also run 3-4 defenses. That is not a coincidence. Those teams are looking for exactly the kind of player Vea is today. The Bears, on the other hand, would be trying to fit a piece from a different puzzle into a system that was not designed for that profile. Does that mean Vea would be bad in Chicago? Not necessarily. He has shown enough versatility across his career to adapt. But it does mean the fit would not be automatic, and we probably would not see the same dominant Vea we saw in Tampa right away. That is exactly the kind of detail that gets lost in the hype of a big name. And honestly, it slipped past me too the first time I read the report. I got excited about the name before I thought about the scheme. The exact same thing happened to me last year with Max Crosby, when the trade with Baltimore was basically built out in my head before the negotiation fell apart. And Crosby ended right back up in Las Vegas, like nothing happened. I learned the hard way, live and on this exact channel, that in this league the hype around a big name guarantees absolutely nothing until there is a signature on the paper. And I am not going to make that same analytical mistake twice inside of 12 months. And here, I have to sound like a broken record, because I have flagged this pattern on the channel for entire seasons now. Ryan Poles has a real tendency to bet on players with complicated medical histories at a discount price, hoping the talent wins out. Grady Jarrett arrived in Chicago with a lot of mileage on his body already, and it shows in his run defense numbers. Kyler Gordon has spent 2 straight seasons cycling on and off the injury list. And now we are talking about possibly signing an extension for a player turning 32 in February, at a position where 350 pounds of body weight does not forgive age gracefully. I am not saying it is exactly the same bet every single time. Every case has its own nuance, but the pattern is there, repeating itself. And as a fan base, we cannot keep pretending we do not see it just because the new name gets us excited in the moment. Now let's talk money, because this is where things get even more complicated. According to Over the Cap, the Bears have just $4.3 million in available cap space in 2026 and $17.8 million projected for 2027. VEA is looking for a contract north of $30 million a year. That number, compared to what Chicago has available right now, basically does not fit without serious restructuring maneuvers. And here is the underlying problem. Ryan Poles already gave Darnell Wright the biggest extension in franchise history. Caleb Williams is waiting his turn for the massive extension that is coming. Rome Odunze is probably entering that same conversation soon. Every dollar spent on VEA is a dollar that is not available to keep this young core together over the next 3 years. That is the real bet behind this trade rumor. It is not just whether VEA fits on the field, it is whether he fits on the spreadsheet. And this brings me to a pattern I have been flagging on this channel for a while now about Ryan Poles. The guy has a clear ceiling. He has never given up more than a second-round pick for any player in a trade. That behavior repeated with Darrell Taylor. It repeated in every aggressive move he has made during his tenure. So if Tampa Bay really decides to sell VEA, and everything suggests that door remains closed for now, the question is not just whether the Bears have interest, it is whether Poles is willing to break his own pattern of pick conservatism to close a trade of this magnitude in a year where the contention window with Caleb Williams is wide open. Now, that same SI article that raised the scheme concern also proposed an alternative that, being honest, feels a lot more logical to me: Max Crosby. We have talked about this on this channel before. The Raiders are still rebuilding. Crosby signed his extension just last year, so there would not be an immediate new contract negotiation. And most importantly, Crosby has played defensive end in a 4-3 scheme his entire career. That is a frictionless system fit. Compare that to VEA, who would need to relearn his entire role. If the Bears are going to spend pick capital and cap capital on a big defensive line name, the tactical logic points more toward Crosby than toward VEA, even though I completely understand why the fan base prefers the name that is actually active on the market right now. Look, I am not going to pretend this does not excite me. Seeing Poles being aggressive, calling, investigating, moving pieces, that is exactly what this fan base has been asking for all offseason. After a period that felt too quiet outside of the Crosby conversation that never got closed. If Poles manages to structure a trade with staggered incentives, limited guaranteed money, and a contract structure that protects the cap over the next 2 years, this could work. But if the condition is paying VEA like a top-of-market player in a scheme where he is not plug and play, then this turns into an expensive bet on solving a problem with the wrong tool. My prediction, and I want to be clear, this is conditional. If Tampa Bay truly decides to sell before the regular season starts, and if Poles manages to structure the contract with smart cap protections, then yes, this trade closes and it immediately improves the worst weakness on this defense. But if Tampa demands high picks on top of the max contract, I think Poles walks away, true to his pattern. and this roster finishes 2026 without solving its interior defensive line problem. I could be wrong. I have underestimated this front office's willingness to move fast when they truly want a player before. But based on what we know today, the scale leans closer to no than to yes. And while everyone is watching Poles' phone, there is something happening at Halas Hall that deserves your full attention, bro. Because this might end up being the quietest, most important story of the entire training camp. Malik Muhammad is taking over the Bears secondary. Let me take you back to the beginning of this because the full story matters more than it looks. Muhammad was Chicago's 4th-round selection in the 2026 draft, pick number 124, a cornerback out of Texas who arrived at the organization with 2 strong pre-draft evaluations. Both Ben Solak of ESPN and Dane Brugler of The Athletic projected him as an eventual starter in the league. That was already a sign the front office had found real value in the 4th round. What nobody predicted was how fast that projection would become reality. The Bears' secondary has been, being honest with you, an injury disaster since camp started. Kyler Gordon remains on the physically unable to perform list with his calf injury. No clear timetable for return. Kobe Bryant went down and had to be carted off practice. Jaylon Jones got hurt last week and only just returned to limited participation. Cam Lewis, who was originally competing for the nickel cornerback job, had to move to full-time safety to cover the hole Bryant left behind. This is exactly the pattern we have been flagging on this channel for months about the depth of this secondary. Every time a starter goes down, there is not enough cushion behind him. But in the middle of that chaos, Muhammad has done something very few 4th-round rookies managed to do. He earned reps with the first team, first at outside cornerback and then at the nickel spot. And he has not wasted a single one of those opportunities. Courtney Cronin of ESPN reported that Muhammad had a broken-up pass on the very first play of an 11-on-11 drill while playing nickel with the starters. Dan Wiederer of The Athletic described him as very active, with plenty of juice in the slot. And this past Sunday, defensive coordinator Dennis Allen spoke directly about him to reporters, saying he knows there is a bullseye on Muhammad's back for being a rookie, but that the kid has a corner's mentality, the kind of player who wants the ball to come his way because he trusts himself to make the play. That comment from Allen is not a casual compliment. In the vocabulary of a veteran defensive coordinator, calling a player's mentality a corner's mentality is acknowledging that he does not fear risk, that he trusts his technique enough to play aggressive instead of playing scared of getting beat. That is exactly the mindset that separates cornerbacks who survive in the NFL from the ones who get stuck on the bench out of fear of making a mistake. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves as a fan base: is this just a rookie taking advantage of other people's injuries? Or are we watching the birth of a real starter? Honestly, I think it is both things at the same time, and that does not take anything away from him. Yes, Muhammad is getting these opportunities because Gordon, Bryant, and Jones are hurt. That is undeniable. But the part that is completely up to him is what he does with those opportunities. And so far, he is capitalizing on them in a way that neither Jaylon Jones nor Josh Blackwell, the other direct competitors for that nickel spot, have managed to match. And here is the detail that connects this to the bigger roster story. The Bears' secondary, when healthy, has the potential to be one of the best in the league, with Jaylon Johnson locked in as a true #1 cornerback, Tyreek Stevenson trying to hold on to his cornerback 2 job, and now a 4th-round rookie earning his way into the starting conversation at slot, not as an emergency fill-in. If Gordon comes back healthy at some point this season, the question Dennis Allen is going to have to answer is not whether Muhammad can play. He already proved that. The question is how you split the workload between 2 players who both earned their spot. Now, I do not want this to sound like I am naming an all-pro out of a kid who has not played a single regular season snap yet, because that would be dishonest on my part. There is something that truly gives me pause. and I would rather say it out loud than keep it to myself just to look good. Muhammad weighs just 186 pounds according to his combine profile, and that is thin even for a slot cornerback. In the NFL, once bigger receivers start testing him on contact routes near the line, especially in the regular season against physical division rival offenses, we are going to find out whether that body can hold up over 16 weeks or whether it starts giving up ground the way it has for more than one promising rookie before him. It reminds me a little of Kyler Gordon in his own rookie year, who also took time to build his body up for the physical pace of the league before turning into the two-time Pro Bowl player we know today. If Muhammad follows that same development curve, this is only the beginning. With that doubt on the table, my direct opinion still stands. If Muhammad keeps this level up in today's preseason game against Cleveland and over the next couple weeks of camp, the Bears should not bench him the moment Gordon comes back healthy. They should find him snaps regardless, because a fourth-round cornerback playing this fast in his rookie year is exactly the kind of asset a front office builds margin for error with going forward. And after everything it has cost to rebuild this secondary over the last 2 years, benching someone who is producing would be a talent management mistake. And to close things out, let's talk about something that is going to be on your screen in a matter of minutes in the game against the Browns. Kieran Amagaji starts today on the left side, and at the same time, he is already getting cut from 53-man roster projections. That contradiction, fam, is exactly the brutal reality of NFL preseason. Let's take this piece by piece, because context is everything here. Amagaji was selected in the 3rd round of the 2024 draft, pick 75, out of Yale. His rookie season was rocky. 125 offensive snaps, mostly at left tackle, and real consistency problems. Then, in September of 2025, he suffered an elbow injury that landed him on injured reserve for most of his second year. So he is entering this 3rd training camp with essentially 1 full development season lost. Now, over the past few weeks, with Braxton Jones sidelined by injury, Amagaji got reps with the first team at left tackle. Jones returned to limited participation on August 13th, but the Bears have kept walking that fine line between hyping up Amagaji publicly and making it clear his roster spot is not guaranteed. Ben Johnson said it in those exact words on August 13th. He has seen improvement from last year, but there are still moments where he needs more consistency. That is the kind of statement that sounds positive on the surface, but read carefully, it is a warning dressed up as praise. For today's game against Cleveland, Johnson confirmed that Amagaji starts the first quarter and that they will alternate him with Jedrick Wills throughout the game to split the snaps evenly. Wills, for those not following closely, is the free agent addition with 57 career starts at left tackle across 5 seasons in Cleveland. Johnson was direct about the comparison. Wills has the traits, long arms, the ability to mirror pass rushers, but he is still behind on system familiarity because he has not spent a full year in Chicago's offense like the other competitors. And here is the real problem for Amagaji. 2 recent roster projections from both Bears Wire and Sports Illustrated already leave him off the 53-man roster, keeping Wills and swing tackle Theo Benedette instead. Mo Moton of Bleacher Report went even further on August 14th, identifying him as the single most likely cut on the entire Bears roster before the regular season opens on September 13th. And the financial detail backs up that cold business logic. Amagaji's rookie contract carries a total value of $5.9 million. But if the Bears waive him during roster cuts, they would save $1.33 million of his $1.61 million cap hit. That is not a savings number that changes the season, but on a roster as tight against the cap as Chicago's is right now, every dollar counts, especially when we are talking in this very episode about finding room for a possible VEA extension. Let me connect this to the bigger off-season story, because it is not a coincidence. Ozzy Trapilo, who was supposed to be the settled starter at left tackle, is expected to miss most of the season, recovering from the ruptured patellar tendon he suffered in January. That left a real competition open between three names: Braxton Jones, Jedrick Wills, and Kieran Amagaji, to fill a hole that was not supposed to exist in the first place. And the likely outcome, based on everything we are seeing, is that Jones starts, Wills comes in as veteran insurance with real starting experience, and Amagaji ends up on the wrong side of the 53-man line. And here is something that really makes me nervous as a fan, because we have lived this exact script before with another day 2 offensive line pick. Teven Jenkins came in as a second-round pick back in 2021 with sky-high expectations, fought through repeated injuries for years, never fully settled into one consistent role, and ended up traded to Kansas City in 2024 for essentially nothing in return. I am not saying Amagaji is going to end up exactly the same way. Every player is different, and the injuries are not identical. But the pattern of a day 2 offensive line pick who cannot find consistency after 3 full training camps is something we already watched fail inside this same organization just a couple years ago. That is the concrete reason it does not surprise me at all that the roster projectors are already cutting him. My honest opinion, I understand why the front office wants to give Amagaji one last real shot today against Cleveland, because he is still young, 24 years old, and the physical talent that made him a third-round pick does not disappear from one year to the next. But I also understand the business logic behind cutting him. A team in win-now mode with Caleb Williams as the center of the entire project cannot afford to keep a tackle who still has not shown consistency after 3 training camps. If Amagaji does not put together a memorable performance over the next 2 or 3 weeks of preseason, this resolves exactly the way analysts are predicting. And honestly, it would not surprise anyone who has followed his development closely. And there you have it, fam. Look at how this connects. The Bears are trying to solve their defensive front with a high-risk phone call for VEA, while on the other side of the roster, a 4th-round rookie is solving a secondary problem nobody expected him to solve this fast. And on the offensive line, a slow development pick is days away from being out of a job. That is the Bears roster in August of 2026. Big pieces that have not arrived yet, small pieces outperforming expectations, and business decisions being made with the cap as the final judge. The thread connecting all of it is simple. Every dollar, every snap, and every decision Poles and Johnson make right now is calculated around one single thing: the contention window with Caleb Williams that is already wide open. I could be wrong about VEA, I already told you that. But what I do know for certain is this roster still has pieces to resolve before the real season starts. And the next few weeks of preseason are going to tell us a lot more than any trade rumor. Bear down, always. If this analysis gave you something to think about, hit the like, subscribe, and tell me below. If you had to choose between closing the VEA trade with the scheme fit risk, or keeping the cap intact for Caleb's extension, which one do you pick? I am reading every single one of your answers. See you in the next one.